शान्तकारी सदा सज्जनानन्ददाता पुरारी चिदानन्द
सन्दोह मोहापहारी प्रसीद प्रसीद प्रभो मन्मथारि न यावत् उमानाथ पादारविन्दं भजन्ति लोके परिवानराणां
तावत् सुखं शान्ति सन्तापनाशं प्रसीद प्रभो सर्वभूताधिवासं न जानामि योगं जपं नैव पूजां न तोऽहं सदा सर्वदा शम्भुतुभ्यं
जराजन्म दुःखो गतातप्यमानं प्रसीद प्रभो सर्वभूतादिवासं न जानामि योगं जपं नैव पूजा न तोऽहं सदा सर्वदा शम्भुतुभ्यं
जराजन्म दुःखो गतातप्यमानं प्रभो पाहि आपन्नमामीश शम्भो
नमामीशमीशान निर्वाणरूपं विभुं व्यापकं ब्रह्मवेदस्वरूपं निजं
निर्गुणं निर्विकल्पं निरेहं चिदाकाशमाकाशवासं भजेऽहं विभुं व्यापकं ब्रह्मवेदस्वरूपं
विभुं व्यापकं ब्रह्मवेदस्वरूपम्
हे गोपाल राधा कृष्ण गोविंद गोविंद
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 गोविंद गोविंद 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 कृष्ण गोविंद गोविंद
हे गोपाल राधा 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 कृष्ण गोविंद गोविंद
गोविंद गोविंद 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 कृष्ण गोविंद गोविंद
हे गोपाल राधा 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 कृष्ण गोविंद गोविंद
गोविंद गोविंद कृष्ण गोविंद गोविंद
गोविंद गोविंद कृष्ण गोविंद गोविंद
गोविंद गोविंद Krishna Govinda Govinda.
Govinda Govinda Krishna Govinda Govinda.
He Gopal Radha 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 Krishna Govinda Govinda.
Govinda Govinda 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 Krishna Govinda Govinda.
He Gopal Radha 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 Krishna Govinda Govinda.
बोलिए सर्वेश्वर भगवान की जय। सर्वे भवन्तु सुखिनः सर्वे सन्तु निरामयाः सर्वे भद्राणि पश्यन्तु मा कश्चित् दुःखभाग् भवेत्। ॐ शान्तिः शान्तिः शान्तिः।
Welcome to Satsang, everyone. You can feel free to move up a little bit, and if those of you on this side wouldn't mind moving in a little bit this way, Induji, you can just show them what I mean. That would be great. So then as people come in from that door, it just makes it much easier for people to come in and sit down there. So if you here can just move, don't worry about those, that's fine. You can just come up. And just create space there. That would be fantastic. Thank you. Just makes entrance easier for people when there's a space right there. Thank you. So as always, I'll start with a question or two that have come in advance, and then open it up to whatever questions anyone here may have. How can we stop regretting the past? Every morning when we wake up, there's a new sunrise. There's a new morning. And if every day as we get up, while we're still literally lying in bed, when our eyes first open, whether they open naturally, whether they open to an alarm, whatever it may be, when our eyes first open, before jumping straight out of bed, just take a moment. And in the first moment, realize how grateful you are to be alive. Simply going to sleep at night does not guarantee that you're going to wake up in the morning. I don't know the statistics, but I'm sure there are many, many people, probably thousands, if not tens of thousands of people, who die in their sleep every night. And so simply have just a moment of connecting with that source and say thank you. That there you are. And there your eyes are able to open. Your ears are able to hear the alarm clock. Your legs are about to be able to walk you into the shower. So much to be grateful for every moment. And just that 30 seconds, 1 minute of just a checking in will anchor you in the new day. If you have a moment, if you can make a moment, see the sun. If you sleep with your curtains drawn, open them. Open them before you go into your bathroom. Just take in for 5 seconds. I'm not trying to add hours onto your morning schedule. 5 seconds on your way into the bathroom. Open the curtains, open the blinds, and just see the sun. See the gift of a new day. And just that extra minute and a half will anchor you very, very deeply in the possibility of newness and the gratitude for newness. That's the first step. The other aspect that comes up all the time, and the reason that we regret the past, is we live in the past. Regret only comes up when I'm thinking about something. I'm only regretting how I spoke to you when I'm thinking about it. Now, we have a lot of lessons to learn from the past, and to stop regretting the past does not mean don't learn any lessons. It doesn't mean live a life in which every day your only philosophy is, I'm only living for the day, therefore I can do whatever I want, live however I want, harm whomever I want or whatever I want. Because, well, it's only for the day and tomorrow it'll be a new day. That's not what it means. Because the ramifications on every level, on a deep spiritual level, on a cellular level, on an emotional level, on a karmic level, and on very basic logistic levels, the ramifications of what I did yesterday or last year are still playing out in my life. And so just because I'm looking to free myself of constant regret doesn't mean that I ignore the impact that every moment has on the next moment and every day has on the next day. And so I take the lessons from the past, particularly if they have brought me pain in this moment, or suffering in this moment, because then I know I don't want to repeat that. I'm sorry, can I just ask you people here to scoot in a little bit so that the people standing in the doorway have space? Yeah. Thank you so much. So I take the lessons. If in the past I touched a hot stove, I burned my hand, The burn has healed. But I'm still overcome by, oh my God, I shouldn't have done that. Now look, my hand is so ugly. I've got this horrible scar. Oh my God, I was so stupid. What was I thinking? Well, that's not very useful, obviously. But the lesson of hot stoves burn is a very important lesson and a good lesson. And so in giving up your regret of, oh my God, I can't believe I did that. That's why now I've got this scar on my hand. I'm so careless. In giving that constant negativity toward the self, in giving that up, I don't give up the lesson. And I don't give up the awareness that if I stick my hand on a hot stove again today, it's going to burn me again. No matter how free I may be of the regret from the past, if I do it again, I'm going to have exactly the same pain, exactly the same suffering. And so we definitely want to carry lessons into the present. The past is useful insofar as it gives us lessons, insofar as it gives us insight. I wonder why I have this scar on my hand. Oh yeah, I remember. I touched the hot stove. Because A, it helps us understand why things are the way they are. Why am I where I am today? Well, if I've got enough insight, I can go back and realize, I actually laid the ground for this. Last week, last month, last year. And also because it really helps us plan for the future. And, so that's one piece. And we can't rewind our lives. There is no mantra, there is no power, there is no possession, nothing you can buy, nothing you can own, nothing you can chant or do that will enable you to go back and redo the past. And so regret for regret's sake, meaning regret that's not useful, regret that's not teaching you a lesson, regret that's not reminding you not to touch hot stoves or not to get in cars with drunk drivers or not to, do things that have ended you up in situations of suffering. Other than that, the just general, God, I shouldn't have made this choice, I shouldn't have made that choice, I should have done that, I should have done this. In psychology we say, hindsight is 20/20. So it's always very clear afterwards what I should have done. I can look back and have 20/20 vision in my hindsight. That was a stupid decision. I should have done that instead. That would have been better. But foresight is not always 20/20. We have a lot more information looking back than we do looking forward. And we tend to judge our foresight based on our hindsight. So stupid. And we don't give ourselves credit for the fact that in most cases we really did make the best decision that we could have made at that time with the information we had available and with, as I always say, the tools that we have in our toolkit. Because if in my toolkit I've got patience and I've got clarity and I've got an internal sense of enoughness and I've got compassion, I'm going to make very different decisions in my present than if in my toolkit I don't have any patience. I've only got impatience. I've only got greed. I've got fear. I've got a pervasive myth of scarcity, that everything is running out. There's not enough. I've got to grab it, have it now. Or a pervasive sense of not enoughness. I need that in order to be enough. If that's all I've got in my toolkit, because we all have toolkits, every one of us. It's how we manage our life. And our toolkit is made up of the tools that we've acquired throughout our life, typically in our childhood. That's where most of the tool manufacturing happens. In families of origin, in early childhood. That's where we get the tools. And so if we were given tools of patience, of love, of understanding, of being grounded and anchored, of having faith in a universe that's good, of clarity, of knowledge of abundance rather than scarcity. Well, then I have that in my toolkit as I go on my life. Maybe I didn't get it in my family of origin, but maybe I've been on a practice since then. A spiritual practice, psychological practice, life practice. I realized I don't have any patience. I've gone about developing patience. So we can change what's in our toolkit. But in looking back over our lives, we very rarely look back with the clarity of, oh yeah, at that time, I didn't know these things. I really was doing the best I could. It was just my toolkit was much more empty at that time. Much less well-stocked than it is now. And instead we look back and we think, oh, I was so stupid. I cannot believe it. I wasted years of my life. I wasted my life. I've ruined my life. I've ruined this. I've done this. In this idea that somehow, because of a decision of the past, my life is over, or I'm stuck, or I'll never have what I should have had. And that's the stuff that's really detrimental and really important to just stop. But the only way to stop it is practice. Because the mind as a habit, you know, it's like any habit. If you bite your nails, or you crack your knuckles, or you twirl your hair, or you pluck your hair, you know, whatever habits people have that we do physically with our hands, with our fingers, or, you know, whatever. I mean, people do all kinds of things with their fingers. So if we've got a habit like that, in order to stop it, it's not enough to just say, I'm not going to bite my nails or crack my knuckles or twirl my hair anymore, because most of the time when I do it unconsciously. I'm not even aware that I'm doing it. And so for the conscious mind to say, I'm not going to do it anymore, is a great first step, but it doesn't usually take us very far. What's most important is bringing the habit into our conscious mind, being even aware that I'm doing it. And then every time I catch myself doing it, stopping. And slowly, 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 it's going to take a while because it takes habits a long time to build, but slowly, 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 you will break the habit. And ruminating over the past is just a habit. It's a habit of thinking. And we just have to break that habit. And so every time you find yourself there, make yourself come back. And, you know, I mean, there's all sorts of fun cognitive behavioral tools to break annoying bad habits, ranging from literally just simple things like having a rubber band on your wrist, and every time you do what it is you don't want to do, minute you catch yourself, just snapping the rubber band. Now it hurts. The inner part of the wrist is really sensitive. And it seems simple, it seems almost silly. But the brain is actually very interesting. And what happens is it brings unconscious patterns conscious. So the minute I find myself halfway through biting off my fingernails, or halfway through cracking my knuckles, or halfway through, pulling out a hair, or I've just pulled out a hair, I snap that. Slowly, slowly, there comes an unconscious pattern in my brain that knows, if I do this, it's going to hurt. And before my finger even goes into my mouth, there's something in my subconscious that's like, just starts to cringe even before I do it, because it knows what's coming. And in the same way, we can actually change our thought patterns. Not everything needs to be changed by years and years of psychoanalysis or in-depth spiritual practice. Some things are just basic habits that we actually can get ourselves out of. The spiritual work gives us that with which to fill the emptiness left by that which I'm getting rid of. And so when I meditate, when I get closer to the truth of who I am, the truth of the universe, that comes in and takes over how I think. Being excited about every new day becomes much easier. Letting go of the past becomes much easier. Understanding my own worthiness becomes much easier. Forgiving those who harmed me becomes much easier from my spiritual practice. But stopping patterns of the brain sometimes is really just as simple as laying a new habit. Now the mind knows ruminating of the past, pain. Ruminating of the past, pain. The minute your mind starts to go there, some subconscious part of the self will start to cringe, because it knows it's going to get that snapped rubber band. And so it doesn't go there. And you slowly, slowly start to change the habit. Or you could do something different. Every time you find yourself ruminating over something negative from the past, substitute it. Give yourself a hopeful, exciting thought for the future instead. Or bring yourself straight back into the present. Do a minute of mindful breathing or mindful walking. There's a lot of ways to retrain the brain. But it's about finding it while it's happening immediately in that moment, and either shifting it to do something else. What am I going to think about instead? What is my mind going to be on instead? Or just creating such a negative response to it that automatically the mind thinks of something else to think about. But we have to, in either case, we have to have a deep belief. And this is where the spiritual practice is so important. We have to have the deep belief that I deserve to be free from my past. That I deserve freedom. That I'm not a victim. That I'm not a bad person. That I haven't ruined everything or made a mess of everything, but actually that I deserve freedom. I have to have that belief first before I can implement any of these strategies, because otherwise I'll just start sabotaging myself. We have to know. It doesn't matter what you've done. My Guru Puja Swamiji always says, God never opens your old files. That wherever you go in the world, everybody else wants to know where have you been. You go for a job interview, they're going to read through your files. You go to get married in India, not so much in other parts, but especially in India, they want the whole file on you, on the family, on everybody. You go to get a loan from the bank, they want your file. Go to get a credit card, they want your file. Whatever you do, there's always some big file that goes along with it. Applying to university, big file. He said, but God never opens your old files. The minute that you go to God, that's it. And so we have to begin that process by knowing deeply that we are worthy. Doesn't matter what we've done in the past. Sure, we'll have the karmic consequences of it. But with God holding our hand, with being carried by God now, we'll be able to bear that, whatever the karmic consequences are. We'll have the strength to bear those. And we'll be able to stop creating more negative karma for ourselves for the future. But it doesn't matter how old you are, how broke you are, how alone you are, how sick you are. Doesn't matter. Every single day is a new day. And Pujya Swamiji also says, whenever you wake up, it's morning. And in that morning, in that new day, if you've been given the rise of the sun from the divine, assume that you deserve everything else from the universe. If God had deemed you unworthy, you wouldn't have woken up. By sheer fact that you have woken up in the morning to the rise of a new sun, you deserve it. And if God thinks you deserve it, who are we to say we don't? But we have to begin first with that. Then we move into the actual practices of letting go. Yes, sweetie? To move more. Yeah. Actually, rather than moving up, if they move in, yeah, in. Yeah, if people can just move in a little bit. Thank you so much. So, before taking any of the other questions from advance, I'm happy to open it up to any questions that anyone here may have. Yes. Yes. Great. Okay, great. So he said, for those of you in the back who may not have heard, he said, last week I heard you speak very passionately about vegetarianism. He said, but what about veganism? Because the dairy and egg industries are just as mired in violence as the meat industry. So first of all, an important clarification. In India, when we speak about being a vegetarian, it includes not eating eggs. So that's an important distinction. I know in the West, some vegetarians eat eggs, some don't. Some, if they don't, then they say, well, that's because they're vegan. In India, vegetarianism means 100% of the time that you don't eat eggs. There's no one who would say, I'm a vegetarian, but I eat eggs. Eggs are unequivocally a non-veg food. Dairy. And I'll come back to eggs again in a moment. Dairy. On a personal level, I was a vegan before I came to India. And when I came here and discovered how the cows who live here are treated like family, and nobody gets killed, and nobody gets artificially inseminated, and no calves are taken away, and the calves drink first and the cows are milked afterwards. And when they stop giving milk, when they get to the age of no longer being able to give milk, nonetheless they're kept. And so we run sort of one part cow milk-giving goshala, one part cow child care center, and one part cow old age home. Meaning if you walk in there at any given time, there's going to be, some cows who are milk giving, some who are too young to give milk, some are too old to give milk. But no one becomes beef. No one becomes shoes. No one becomes belts. No one becomes anything other than a cow. And so I started drinking milk again here. I still, to this day, only drink milk either here in the ashram, or should I find myself somewhere where they actually also have a cow, which in India happens sometimes. You actually are at someone's house and discover that they've got their own cow and treat the cow as a member of the family, and it's always lovely to get milk there as well. But it's an important question on a broader scale than just my particular personal eating habits. The meat industry, or animal agriculture, is the single greatest contributor to global warming. And so for those of you who weren't here last week when I spoke passionately about it, I want to take a moment and recap that, because you can't say it too much. It doesn't matter what you care about. As long as you care about something other than your own taste buds, the meat industry is causing damage to whatever you care about. Whether it's the health of your own body, even if that's as far as your care can go. Whether you can care about something like starvation. Tens of thousands of children who are dying of starvation every day. If we can care about that. If we can care about global warming. If we can care about deforestation of the rainforests. If we can care about water. Animal agriculture is singularly responsible for a vast amount of hunger in the world, of deforestation of the rainforests. It is, as I said, according to the United Nations, the single greatest contributor to global warming. The amount of water that goes in the production of 1 pound of beef is the amount of water that you use in bathing every day for 6 months, approximately. Which means, as we know, that our world is about to enter dire water shortages. We're already there in many, many places. But the UN estimates that by 2040, the world will have half the water it needs. India's by 2030. That's like today, basically. So until and unless you are prepared to refrain from bathing for 6 months, if you care about water in the world, you couldn't actually eat beef with good conscience unless you literally were prepared to not bathe for 6 months to offset the water. Chicken is about 1/3. It also, and I'll just give this one last statistic of it, but it also, as I said, is a huge part of hunger in the world. We actually produce enough grain, wheat, rice, soy, corn, to give every single person on earth 2 loaves of bread a day. There's no need for anyone to sleep hungry. About 1 billion people sleep hungry every night. And tens of thousands die of starvation every day. But there is no need for anyone to be hungry, let alone die of starvation. We produce enough food for some 10 billion people, with only 7+ living. The problem is that the grain we produce, instead of going to feed people, is going to feed the animals who later get killed to become hamburgers and hot dogs and chicken McNuggets. And so cycling our grain like that, where the vast majority of it ends up getting digested by them, creates a situation where it takes approximately 16 pounds of grain in order to end up with 1 pound of beef. But only 1 pound of grain to produce a pound of bread or pasta, rice. So we're literally eating for 15 other people if we're eating meat. But shifting to the eggs and dairy for a moment to bring it into the vegan aspect of it. Eggs are an interesting situation. As far as regular eggs go, meaning the normal fertilized kind that the hen lays and the male sits on it and it gets fertilized and then it becomes a chicken. Clearly, that's an animal product. I mean, you can't have a situation where just because the animal hasn't yet popped out of it, it's a vegetable. I mean, either something's an animal or it's a vegetable. It's not like, wait, eat it before it becomes an animal. You know, if I eat it today, it's a vegetable. If I eat it next week, it's chicken. But logically, it doesn't make any sense. In fact, in LA, where I'm from, there's a wonderful museum called the Museum of Science and Industry. And I love the museum. I still love it. I used to go a lot when I was a kid, but I still go whenever I have the chance. And they have a wonderful exhibit of eggs in an incubator. And if you stand there long enough, because they put them there, you know, the people who are curating the exhibit know how long it takes an egg to hatch, and they want kids to all be able to see eggs hatch. So they put them in there in such a way that if you stand there for 20 minutes or so, inevitably you'll see one of the eggs starts to hatch. And it rolls back and forth, and then there's a little crack that comes in it, and then this little wet head kind of, you know, squeezes its way through, and eventually a little chicken hobbles out of the egg. And right next to it, as part of the same exhibit, is what looks like an oversized microscope slide. So it's about this long or so, and it's broken into 7 sections, and it's the gestation period of a chicken. And then they've got this high-powered microscope. And without the microscope, what it looks like is, you know when you crack open an egg? And you open it up, you crack it open, and there's the yolk, and there's the white, and then there's that tiny, tiny little thing that just looks like kind of a little squiggle that comes out of the yolk into the white. Do people who have cracked eggs open know what I'm talking about? Nod. Yes, thank you. Okay. So that it's a tiny, tiny little squiggle. If you haven't noticed it, notice it the next time you crack open an egg. To the bare eye, what they were showing was just that little squiggle. Then you look under the microscope, and it turns out that's actually the fetus. The reason that the egg is so full of protein and all of the things that make people want to throw them into their morning shakes or start their day with them is actually for a chicken to eat it. Humans are fed through the placenta. The mother eats, the baby gets fed. But chickens are not fed like that. Once the egg is laid, there's no way to get any more nutrients into it. And so God has created this incredible system where whatever the chick is going to need is already there. And so you move the microscope along the slide and you watch this gestation period. And in the beginning, you see it's a spinal cord. It's the spinal cord. And then slowly, slowly, as you move, it starts to act. And then there's the head, and there's the chicken arms and legs. And it actually looks, to the untrained eye, which mine is, very much like a human fetus. You'd be really hard-pressed unless you were a biologist to say that's a chicken rather than that's a baby. And you move the microscope away, and again, to the naked eye, it still just looks like that little squiggle in the egg. And so to me, that was the most powerful demonstration of why eggs are not and cannot possibly be a vegetarian food. Clearly, the moment the chick walks out of it, it's no longer vegetarian. But to say until that happens, it is, makes no sense. We then, however, get into the question that comes up all the time, so I will just mention it to begin with, about unfertilized eggs, which isn't, I don't think, such a big thing in many parts of the world. It's become a bigger thing in America. It's particularly become a bigger thing for people who want to consider themselves vegetarians or kinder people, and therefore, if the egg is unfertilized, it has no chance of being a chicken. And I've thought about it a lot, and honestly, assuming that the eggs are treated well, I mean, factory farms are evil. They are just evil. If you believe that animals have a soul, or even if you don't believe they have a soul, if you believe they have a heart, if you believe they have a nervous system that feels anything at all, factory farms are evil. But I always get questions about things like, okay, so hens are raised on a really nice farm by really nice people. They roam around all day. They're not, injected with anything. There's no hormones. There's no antibiotics. And the eggs are unfertilized. And the hens aren't killed. And it's this, really beautifully storybook situation. Well, then what? And the question has come up enough that I've thought about it. And I cannot come up with any deep moral reason why it would be wrong to eat that egg. It's a natural byproduct. And as long as the hen is treated as a part of the family like the cows here are, I don't see any moral problem. And yet, what we really have to ask ourselves is, are we actually meant to be eating the menstrual cycle of another species? That's what it is. I mean, the reason that it's a byproduct, the egg is the chicken's menstrual cycle. In human females, we also release an egg a month, but it doesn't come out as an egg. It sits in our fallopian tubes for a while, and if it's not fertilized, it comes out as our period. But for chickens, it's different. They actually let the egg out into the world, and either it gets fertilized or it doesn't. But so if to you, you're good with the idea that eating the menstrual cycle of another species is a healthy and good thing to do, and you're sure that your eggs are absolutely unfertilized and the hens are treated wonderfully and there's no steroids and no antibiotics and it's all organic, well, go right ahead. Go right ahead. I don't have a serious moral issue with that. Dairy. Lastly, the dairy situation. In most of the West, particularly with regard to factory farms and corporations and the milk that you buy in cartons in the grocery store, the dairy industry is literally in bed with the meat industry. And so it is absolutely impossible to drink milk and not be simultaneously supporting the meat industry. The way that most of the dairy farms work is that when the calves are born, because remember, of course, the mother cow gets milk to give her calf, so she gives birth to a calf. When the calves are born, they're immediately wrested away from their mothers and they're sent away to become veal or beef, depending on which company I work with. So all of those births immediately are becoming meat. In a best case scenario, a girl calf gets kept until she can become a dairy cow. But that's actually, I've learned recently, that's actually not how they do it, because it's even sadly, even organic milk. I went through a period where I drank organic milk with this illusion that somehow if it was organic, that meant it was also kinder. Because organic is good, and organic companies are supposed to be nice companies and good people. And so I'd had this vision that organic milk meant somehow that the cows also were treated more kindly. And what I found is that it's actually the exact same situation. When an organic milk-giving cow gives birth, her babies, the boys and the girls, immediately go off and become either veal or beef. Because for the organic milk company to keep even a female calf and feed her for the years that it takes before she starts giving milk, and feed her organic feed, because in order for the milk to be organic, the cows have to always be fed organic feed, is way too expensive for them. It's much, much better business for them to sell all the babies off to become beef. And then, as and when they need a new organic milk-giving cow, they just buy one from the companies who raise and breed organic milk-giving cows. And so, even sadly, the organic milk companies are just as much in bed with the beef industry. And so it's all a big, massive economic game in many cases. But fortunately, and this is the upside of it all, it gives us an incredible power. Because what that means is, every single day, 3 times a day, I have the opportunity to choose peace. I have the opportunity to choose nonviolence. I have the opportunity to make a difference in the world. Most of us are dying to make a difference in the world. Most of us are dying to be able to do something that has a ripple impact of positive good. But unless we've got tons of money that we can just write lots of checks to other organizations who do good, or unless we're prepared to start our own NGO or give up all of our time to do that, there's not that much that we can do that has that big of an impact. Sure, we may sign petitions online and forward things and post things and, like things and whatnot. But sadly, that doesn't actually usually have that big of an impact. But what we eat every day, every single time you choose vegetarian food over non-veg, even if you don't become 100% vegan immediately, every single time you make that choice, you are choosing life for the planet, not just for that animal, but you're choosing life for the human sisters and brothers with whom you share this planet. You're choosing life for the future. And so it's an incredible opportunity. I don't know anything else that offers us that ability to make that enormous of an impact 3 times a day. So don't take the information and feel depressed by it. Rather, take it and feel empowered by it. You are not a slave to your tongue, just as we're not a slave to anything. You know, one of the things we've been talking about so much in here the last few nights, but it's also a common theme, is freedom. Freedom is really the highest goal of our spiritual practice. Freedom from that which binds me. And so if I'm working on being free of my past, free of my ego, free of my grudges, free of my ignorance, free of my desires, free of my fears, shouldn't free of my tongue be there somewhere? I mean, really, I can let go of my past, I can let go of my ego, I can let go of my fears, but that tongue, my God, somewhere in there, we should realize that being free of our tongue is also a very important freedom. Puja Swamiji says there's 3 important T's: time management, thought management, and tongue management. So becoming a vegan is, I am deeply and passionately convinced, is probably the most important choice that you can make for the future of the or win the lottery and have trillions of dollars to support organizations that are protecting the world. The single most important thing that you can do is to become a vegan or a vegetarian and own your own cow. Yes. Yeah, good question. Good question. It depends where in India you are, and it depends what you're eating. In these areas, unless you're eating things that are totally out of season, that have come up on a, truck from South India or are coming in from abroad, chances are, most of the stuff that's in season, most of the stuff that's locally grown, chances are it's going to be very close to organic. And the reason simply is that non-organic farming hasn't yet become a big thing in the hilly areas. The people in the hilly areas do farming that's, yeah, exactly, step farming, terrace farming, which is much harder to do in a non-organic way in terms of spraying things than typically the big commercial farms are big flat pieces of land. When you're dealing with smaller pieces of land in terraces that are village farms, family farms where they just take the veggies to the market, they've never seen pesticides and chemicals. They're doing it the same way that their ancestors have always done it. So by God's grace, still, I think, the vast majority of things, again, assuming they're in season, assuming they're local, and you can ask. You can ask the guy selling the vegetables, where do these come from? They should be able to tell you where they buy them. Whose vegetables they're buying. Here in the ashram, we have a farm. We have an organic farm that provides lots and lots of vegetables. It doesn't provide us, unfortunately, enough to do everything organic. We're hoping to be able to get there, but it does provide us a lot, especially in this season. This is just a great season for the upcoming winter. Is just a great season for lots and lots of vegetables. But if you're in other parts of India, it's not organic. And not only is it not organic, but tragically, they're using chemicals that have been banned in other parts of the world. These non-Indian multinational companies come into countries like India and they sell chemicals that have been banned abroad to farmers as what they call davai. Now, davai is the Hindi word for medicine. But it's so calculated and it's so insidious that they actually take these poor farmers and they give it to them for free to get them hooked. It's medicine, it's medicine, it's medicine. Now their yields are 100%. Now they don't have to do the time and energy of what they were doing with, cow dung or neem leaves or whatever they were doing previously. Now all they've got to do is spray these chemicals, and they get them hooked. And it's horrendous, it's tragic, but it's rampant. As in, commercial societies where money still is able to wreak that kind of damage. But fortunately, over the last few years, the organic market in India has increased incredibly. I mean, just skyrocketing. And so you can find organic food pretty much everywhere, which is good. And more shops are opening up, more and more restaurants are opening up, especially in the big cities. And again, in the little villages, most of it is still organic to begin with, just because they don't have the money for other stuff. But if you're eating in the big cities, you can be pretty sure A, it's not organic, and but B, you also probably in the big cities do have options. And if you went online to try to find an organic restaurant or grocery store, there's several available. But yeah, it's a tragedy here. It's something we're working very hard to prevent, actually, particularly in our state. So, but it's great. The government is now getting very, very supportive of organics and starting to do more and more programs for organics. And the whole state of Sikkim actually has declared it an organic state. So it's probably the only country in the world that actually has a state that's fully organic. So we're hoping that Uttarakhand will be next. Yes. Wonderful. Everything's great. Great. Wonderful. Okay. So how do we free ourselves of emotional dependence and start the journey within? The first step, of course, always is recognizing I'm emotionally dependent. Most of us don't even realize that. The way that most of us react is, I'm so angry. Why are you angry? Because you did this, or you didn't do that, or how dare you do this, or how dare you not do that, or I need you to do this, or you better do that. We don't even realize I'm dependent on that. We're so blinded by the concept that what I want, how I want it, when I want it, is actually what's right. You are wrong, you better. And we live in such a way that my inner world is dependent on my outer world. So my swasthiti, we say, my internal situation, is dependent on, created by, my paristiti, the situation around me. And if you say to most people, why are you upset? Or, oh, it was a horrible day, I'm so depressed, I'm so upset. They'll give you a reasons of things in the world that happen. My boss did this, my coworker did that, somebody stole my parking spot, this guy, hit the bumper of my car, whatever it was. But but it's always something from the outer world. And very few people even stop and think, as you have, oh wait, I'm emotionally dependent. I'm absolutely dependent upon the people around me, behaving, speaking, living in a certain way in order for me to feel okay. So that simple awareness is a great first step. We then say to ourselves, okay, so why do I need that so much? What really makes me angry is when you come home late, let's say. I need you to be on time. Well, why? Why do I get so upset when you're late? And this is where introspection and insight is really helpful. Because clearly it's not the issue of 10 minutes. What is it that's happening? And when we start to introspect, what we realize is, oh, okay, when you don't come home on time, and I'm just creating an example, when you don't come home on time, it means that you don't love me. It means that I'm not important to you. And if you don't love me, then who am I? If this relationship of being your wife, your husband, your friend, your whatever the relationship may be, that's how I identify. And if you don't love me, that must mean I'm unlovable. And if I'm unlovable, then I'm unworthy. And so suddenly what we realize is that it's not so much about the 10 minutes as it is about my own experience of not being worthy, not being lovable, not being whole. Because if you don't love me, and obviously you do, it's just that you're always late, but it actually doesn't have anything to do with loving me, but nonetheless in my brain it means you don't love me. If I'm so afraid of losing that love, it's because I've convinced myself that I need that love in order to survive, that somehow I'm not full enough. If I don't have you attached into me, and you attached into me, and you attached into me, and all of you attached into me, and these are our family members, and these are our employees, or these are our friends, if I'm not having you all plugged into me, filling me, I don't feel full. And what that means is that I need to constantly make sure that you're all doing exactly what I want you to do, because if not, I don't feel full. And that's a really great place to start a spiritual practice, because the spiritual experience is one of being full. What we know, what we're told over and over again in the scriptures is, you are full. Right? Purnamada. Purnamidam. Right? It's fullness. Fullness comes out of fullness. Purnamada. Purnamidam. It's a beautiful mantra. Purnamada, Purnamidam, Purnat, Purnamudachyate, Purnasya, Purnamadaya, Purnameva Vashishyate. And what it means is that is whole and complete and full. The capital T, that. And this, which has been removed from, created out of that, is also full and whole and complete. It's the spiritual experience of mathematics of infinity. What's infinity minus 10? Infinity, right? Infinity divided by 10, infinity. Infinity divided by 7 billion. Infinity. So if we believe that the divine is infinite, which all of our spiritual traditions emphasize that it is, then all of us who have been created out of that divinity are also infinite. When we speak about the soul, spirit, right? That's who you are. You're eternal. Lord Krishna gives it so beautifully in the Bhagavad Gita, right? The soul cannot be cut with knives, right? Dried by the wind, burned by fire, wet with water. It's eternal. So if you're eternal, how can someone showing up 10 minutes late have any impact whatsoever on your eternal nature? It's only when I forget that I'm eternal, when I forget that I'm whole, when I forget that I'm complete, when I forget that I'm infinite, that suddenly I need you to fill my holes. And so how to free ourselves of that is a practice of coming into touch with my own wholeness. My own wholeness, my own fullness, through practices of meditation, through practices of prayer, through practices of devotion, through practices of chanting japa, through all of the spiritual practices that we have that connect us with God. They don't just connect us with God sitting out there. The spiritual practice connects us with God in here. That's yoga, right? That's the union. When we talk about yoga, well, yoga is a union. Union of the self with the divine. A re-remembering that I'm one with the divine. And so whatever form of yoga I practice, it all takes me back. If I practice it sincerely, it takes me back into that union. And once I know that I'm one with God, then who's on time, who's not on time, who sings my praises, who criticizes me, who, it's of very little relevance. You may need it as far as planning. I mean, if you've got a plane to catch, it matters to be on time. But it's not going to be an emotional dependence. You don't need it to feel whole. Regardless of what someone says or does, you're able to understand that's just them. That's them in their karmic package. But it doesn't have any impact on my fullness, on my wholeness. And you've got something that you're anchored into that you can keep going back to realize. It means you only know it intellectually, not experientially. And that's the dilemma. We know a lot of things in our mind, but this is why we actually have to do spiritual practice, why it's not enough to just read books. We have to actually also practice. Reading the books, they're wonderful. They inspire us. They point us in the right direction. But you've got to actually do it. You've got to have the experience. Someone else having had the experience and telling you about it isn't going to help you any more than someone else describing the meal they just ate is going to alleviate your hunger. I can tell you what's great to eat. I can suggest restaurants. But ultimately, you've got to go and eat it. Wonderful. Have a beautiful rest of your evening. Tomorrow will be our last satsang for almost a month, actually, sadly. I will be abroad in various places for not quite a month, but almost. We'll post on the board and the reception, and also on our website and Facebook page and everything about when it's going to start. But it'll be around the 3rd week of November that I will be back. So I'm 99% sure that they will be showing satsang videos here. Every night they will be doing that. So at this same time, they actually will be showing videos from previous satsangs. So feel free to come in and be part of that. And I will be back. We have tomorrow. I'll be here tomorrow. But then I'll be back only after a few weeks.